Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, the rainbow chart, as well as other macro charts and indicators. And starting off with fear and greed. We are still down in fear, and the S&P even showing signs of breaking under its 50-week moving average. So do keep an eye on Bitcoin. It tends to follow what the overall stock market is doing. I'll be talking more about that later this week if that is a trend that continues. But as we can see, over the course of the past half a year almost, we can see that Bitcoin from its high in greed has just been making these lower highs, lower lows. Did get a little bit of a jump here, but it does look like it might be curling down. So I'll show you the levels I'm looking for if the market was to set up another base or to go down a little bit further, but something to keep an eye on. As far as seasonality, something else I've been talking about on this channel is how when February is negative, March tends to not be so great as well. However, April, as you can see, is the second best month outside of November for crypto. So we've seen a lot of downward price action. Let's hope that April, maybe it'll take a couple weeks, maybe April's when we see things start to turn around a little bit for crypto. And I know many of you are here studying the crypto cycles and the charts and the indicators because you have hopes of alt season. And we'll take a look at some of those charts as well. What I look for when we have alt season, but the most simple way I can put this is when altcoins do very, very well. It is when Bitcoin is topped or is topping out. The last two cycles, when Bitcoin has topped or is in the process of topping out, Bitcoin becomes too expensive to buy, and a lot of money rotates into some of the altcoins or the mining stocks. And just to keep in perspective, on the way to that top, we do see a number of pullbacks. This 15% one is now around 30%. So just keep that in perspective. As far as the alt season macro index overall, we can see that it is still in this pattern of higher lows and higher highs, but it's definitely at this higher low base right here. So maybe it'll come down a little bit, but I am looking for more confirmation at this point of the market cycle, just with where Bitcoin is respect to the 50-week moving average. I'll get into that too. Also, as we see Bitcoin have these large moves up, we do see on the rainbow chart, it has these pullbacks of a color band or two or so. So when Bitcoin almost got up to the orange color band, which was close to 111K, remember Bitcoin got to 109K, it has come all the way down. And if you're wondering where the lower area of this current color band Bitcoin is at, the lower area is at 72K. And that's an area to watch for because that was around where the top was back here and even where the top was in March of 24. So the 2021 top and the March top, I would not be shocked if we did see a base around that 70K area. Just something to watch for. Make a strategy, have a plan if it happens. I'm not saying it's going to, but if it happens. Talk about other crypto content on this channel, altcoins, mining stocks. So subscribe if you want to hear more about that. So overall, I want to title this video Perspective. And one of the things I think it's important for us to keep is perspective when there are these negative times in the market. And I have on the Heikin-Ashi candles because they do a good job showing the trend. The trend is your friend. But you can see that overall, we have had 2 months of red candles, and we have not really had that since July of 2023. So you can see it's been a while, a year and a half really, since Bitcoin has this much downward price action. Now, you can compare it to after March as well, where yes, there were these positive green candles, but it still went downwards overall. So I give you that. But another thing to keep in perspective, one of the indicators I have on right now is the moving average for the 20, 50, 100, and 200. Right now we're on the weekly time scale. So this is the 20 moving average, this is the 50 moving average, the 100, the 200. All right, you got that. For perspective, how often has Bitcoin been at its 50-week moving average since the bottom? Well, of course, it was underneath here, but once it broke above it. And that's when a lot of people consider a stock or a crypto, any sort of asset to be bullish is, well, you can see once it broke up, we had a touch of the 50 moving average once, twice, three, four times, five. So this is pretty rare. We've been doing this since the end of December 22. This has been going on for over 2 years. And so you can see it is rare that we get down to the 50-week moving average. Just going to past cycles after we had a cycle top, then a bottom. So this is a 2017 top and bottom. Once we broke above that, I'll have you keep in perspective that before the next top, how would you have felt if you bought anywhere in here when Bitcoin was around the 50-week moving average or below it? Those were some of the most rare times to buy before Bitcoin eventually went up further. So I see fear in the market. I see negative price action in the stock market as well as crypto. But I do think it's worth keeping in mind perspective that when we are at these moving averages or lower, in my mind, Bitcoin goes from being very expensive to a better value, especially for the altcoins, because when Bitcoin goes down roughly 30%, on the daily we get a more accurate measure, but around 30%. When Bitcoin goes down 30%, you're going to see altcoins going down 50 to 90%. So just something to keep in perspective. In this 50-week moving average, it is at around 77K. If we go to the daily, you can see that the daily, we had a rejection off the 50, got back under the 200. It's been going down. So if it gets to the lower end of this channel, look at this number on the side. That's 72K. Remember, we talked about this in the rainbow chart, at the lower end of this green band is around 72K. So that is another area to watch for. Now, when we've had corrections in the past, for example, the correction last August, we'll draw fib high to low. You can see that we had a 236 retracement, which was around a 51K before going up. And this was right around where the 50-week moving average is. I'll show you that on the weekly moving average. You can see right here, 50-week moving average, as well as a 236 retracement. If Bitcoin is to see something similar to another 236 retracement from its high, I'm just showing you this to keep in mind, then we could see that channel, it does connect there, but that is at around 69K. And I'm not saying we'll see weekly candle bodies, but maybe we'll see a price spike before a base and being set up to go higher. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the S&P breaking possibly under its 50-week moving average. If the S&P comes down to its 100-week moving average, I'm willing to bet pretty well that I would not be surprised to see Bitcoin get under the 50 and get closer to its next macro moving average as well, the 100-week moving average. And let me be clear, I've talked about this a couple weeks ago, just saying if we see things turn bearish. I'm not saying I'm not buying. I like to buy more when we're bearish because it's not as expensive as it was. But when we get under the 50-week, that is when I don't just buy levels, but I wait for confirmation. A couple ways of waiting for confirmation. You can wait for the stochastic RSI to flip positive, which it is, but we can see it can still chop around down here as well. So I wait for the stochastic RSI to be positive, which it is right now. So that's good. I wait for a buy signal, at least on the weekly, and we do not have any sort of buy signal right now. That's one indicator I use. But the other indicator I've been saying we all have to keep an eye on is the MACD, because in the past, when the MACD is flipped positive, we see these large moves by Bitcoin. So again, when it flipped positive, that's when we have these big moves up. Right now, the MACD seems to be getting stretched out, but we want to see this start to curl up. So once the MACD starts curling up, who knows where price will be? Maybe Bitcoin will be at around the low 70Ks. But that is an indicator that we have to watch for, is that MACD right there. Drawing another fib just from the prior cycle high to low. There are many ways to draw fibs, but you can see here that when Bitcoin was making a newer high in March, we were never getting candle bodies closing above this line. So I just want to keep that in mind. And as far as price targets, this was woo. I was not meaning to hit that. Let's try that again. As far as price targets, when we take our fib off log scale, this was a target we were watching for, because when we take our fib off log, we see that we had the 1618 at around 101. I was saying 102K when I measured it more accurately. But you can see we ran into resistance at that fib. So do not be surprised to see Bitcoin come back down to this lower level. All right. Other things to keep in perspective, just something to think about when it comes to Bitcoin is you see when we have these large moves up, when Bitcoin's doing well, when we have greed in the market, these moves don't last as long as when we are going sideways. So once Bitcoin bottomed and started to really have these large spikes up, we can see that Bitcoin, it can spend 200 days going sideways. Here we had some nice large moves up overall. I mean, this whole this whole bullish move, that lasted for a while. That was great. But when we get those large moves up that last for a while, we saw Bitcoin going sideways for 224 days. Okay, so again, something to keep in perspective, that after we see Bitcoin come up, and I'm not doing any exact math here. I'm not trying to predict based off averages, but I'm just saying that if this gets stretched out for a while, that it would not be surprising to see Bitcoin go sideways for, I don't know, 6 months or so before having another large violent move up. And that's been something people have noted, is that there's this 4-year cycle where you'll see these peaks are in the end of every 4 years of the post-halving year. So December 2013, another 4 years later, December 2017, another 4 years later, it was November of 21. And so people are wondering, is by the end of the year, we're going to get a large move up into one of these orange bands? And you can see here one of the orange color bands. And you can just take a look at this. Just a child can see this pattern. It's that Bitcoin, we have these diminished returns on this log scale, factor of 10. We have these diminished returns that goes down a color band or two every time Bitcoin tops. So if Bitcoin was to have a top later this year, you can see that orange band, you see that number's around 150K, and then the next orange band is close to 200. Remember what I was showing you with the fib before, how Bitcoin got to the 1618? Well, you'll be happy to see that we have, now this fib is not drawn as well as it could. So let's get this more accurate. I want this fib to be perfect. Let's get that right to the line there. All right. It's as perfect as I can draw it right now. But you can see that 150 and that 200K area, that's right between the 2618 and 3618. So if Bitcoin is getting anywhere near this 2618 level, that might be the level where, remember what I talked about before, where Bitcoin is topped or is topping out for that cycle and becomes too expensive to buy and then rotates. So once Bitcoin is getting up into close to that 2618 area, that's when I think we could be closer to the end of a cycle, as we've seen in this rainbow chart, and then a beginning or anything good. So that would be part of my plan for profit taking in those areas around 150K. If it got up higher, 180K, 200K, great. You know, these things are hard to predict. I'm not trying to predict, but I am sharing with you my plan. I think having a plan, a strategy is more important than a prediction. Let's see here. Oh, we have to go to the weekly. Like, why is this messed up? So, anywho, we also see here, this is a indicator called the log regression. And we can see here that this indicator, or these bands, have shown us where there's been tops as well. So Bitcoin got a little bit into that log regression band. Maybe it comes back down, has a little bit of a retest, like I said, between the 50 and the 100 before going back up. And you can see the upper end of the log regression band. It might get 150 to 180K or so. Lastly, going over to some indicators to watch for alt season. I'm not going to talk too much about this today, but we do have the Bitcoin dominance chart. Bitcoin dominance still in this bullish trend. I'm waiting to see what it does around 64% because it tagged it before. Maybe that's an area that we see a reversal. Let's take a look at ETH Bitcoin while we're here. ETH Bitcoin still going lower. I'm eyeing 0.12 as a possible bottoming area, or even as low as 0.1. We'll take a look at two more. Total 3 divided by Bitcoin, and then others Bitcoin. So total 3 divided by Bitcoin. We've been talking about how this has been possibly rounding out. Now, maybe, it is getting rejected by that 20-week moving average. Maybe it will find a base here at around 0.4 at this 618 fib. So not surprised to see if it eventually did a 618 retracement. And then others, which is the total market cap of all the cryptos outside the top 10 divided by Bitcoin, we see that we are still in this ascending channel. I am wondering if we're going to get back down to this channel band and then pop up. So we'll see. All indicators and charts, they work until they don't. And then when they break down, you have to reassess. So anyways, those are my thoughts on Bitcoin. Again, my message is to keep things in perspective. And as another month comes up, part of my strategy is having a budget, monthly budget. I will be looking at certain altcoins or miners to dollar cost average into. However, like I said, once we are getting bearish, I am looking for confirmation. Those buy signals, stochastic positive, I'm looking for confirmation on multiple levels and not just buying certain dip levels because those can turn into falling knives. So that's part of my strategy, not financial advice for you, but just how I change my approach as things turn bearish. It doesn't mean I stop buying, but I definitely wait for confirmation just in case we see something like this. I'm not saying we're going to get a COVID black swan, but you never know when we get these large spikes down. And if we do and we see things, we see the sky falling, I think it's important to have a strategy to protect yourself. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you all are doing well. Just got back from a 1-week vacation, so it is great to be back here chatting with y'all once again. So hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care.